Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new episode of Flesh Wound Farce, where we discuss and review your and our favorite comedy films. This is the world's first and only combination trivia host and professional wrestling announcer of Chilean descent. Currently resides in Southern California, Ozzy V. And with me, as always, on this program, first in the Northern Bay Area is Greg. How you doing, Greg?
Man, I'm doing well. I just had my fantasy hockey draft, trying to get rid of this last place trophy, so I'm doing well. How are you doing there, Ozzy?
Can you, for those listening to audio only, can you describe the monstrosity that is your last place fantasy trophy? Is fantasy hockey last place fantasy trophy or hockey, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go. Please explain.
It's called the Robles. It's a towel that is on top of a nice little stand that has all the names of the last place people, but the Robles is spelled out in on the towel in a concoction of, I believe it was Tootsie Roll and modeling chocolate with some sealing glue to look like fecal matter for the shittiest team.
It does a fantastic job.
Yeah.
It definitely serves its purpose.
Yeah.
Anyhow, the other voice you heard laughing at that towel was Flesh Room producer Todd. How you doing, Todd?
I got a beef, Ozzy. I just realized something.
What's that?
You need to work in podcaster into your intro now.
You know, I don't. If I get paid for it, sure. I don't get paid for it right now, unless, somebody listening, like, wait, you don't get paid for this? You sound like you should get paid for this. Well, we don't have advertisers, but we do also have a Patreon. You can pay me that way as well. Patreon.com/fleshwound features. And of course, if you're listening to the video version, thank you for watching. You should also catch us in the audio version, wherever you enjoy your podcasts, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you like. And if you're listening to the audio version, check out the video at fleshwoundfeatures.com.
I just want to.
I'm sorry.
Did you almost say Smodcast?
I did almost say Smodcast. And a funny joke is
only
there's a little inside joke going on here that I resemble Dante from Clerks, and I'm turning 37 this year. And I mentioned that before. I don't know if that was just stuck in the back of my head, and like something else was like, you should say Smodcast because Kevin Smith is in your head. Although I do feel my shirt of choice would fit on that podcast if that was the case. I realized the first time I'm wearing this shirt, Darth Vader and Boba Fett in the Pulp Fiction Dual Guns. The first time I'm wearing this after seeing The Mandalorian. So it kind of feels it's a little bit different. I think I like the shirt a little bit more now.
I finally enjoy Boba Fett.
Well,
never was a fan before.
He never proved it why you should be a fan of his. Anyway,
right.
That's a story for a discussion for another time. But this episode, we reviewed the 1986 comedy starring John Candy and Eugene Levy, Armed and Dangerous. But before we get into that, we do also have our segment where we have a stupid discussion about a commercial. This week's commercial features Domino's Pizza. Todd, if you would please do the honors.
At Domino's, you can carry out 3-topping pizzas for just $7.99 each. And with Domino's Carside Delivery, you can conveniently stay in your car while you do it. Just pull up, check in online, and we'll quickly bring your food to you.
Thank you.
So you don't have to get out to get carry out. Like Denny here.
Hey, Hamlin. I like your PJs.
PJs? What?
Stay in the driver's seat with Domino's Carside Delivery.
All right. Two things. One, I'm pretty sure those race cars. Now, if you're listening to the audio version and you're not familiar with the commercial, there's a race car driver pulls up next to a minivan at a Domino's Pizza. The driver in the minivan pulls up the Domino's app and selects curbside delivery, while the race car driver is taking apart his harness and then taking apart the wheel and trying to get out the car. And then as the minivan already has their food and is on their way, a child yells out and says, "Hey, Hamlin, I like your PJs." And then they drive off. And I thought to myself, how does she know the name of that guy, but not know that that's a racing suit?
Fair point.
Like, I mean, if she had said, "Hey, dude, I love your PJ," like that would have been really funny, actually. But the fact that she knows his name, it's like, well, then you're just making fun of all race car uniforms.
I'm good.
Lost the effect.
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Uh-oh. Okay.
With as you saw last week with the run-in, I have a 4-year-old. Doesn't mean that child doesn't always say that those are their pajamas that they're driving in the car.
Fair point. Maybe all race car drivers drive in their PJs.
Let's just hold on a second. Let's go further on this as more than we should. How old do you think this kid was?
I can't tell kids' ages.
But like just to guess, like, would you say 6?
I'd say yeah. 6.
Okay, so think back to when you were 6 years old. Try. If you knew a celebrity at age 6, you loved that celebrity. Or you really hated them if you were in professional wrestling and they were a heel, a bad guy, a villain. Then you hated them. But in most cases, like, you were excited to see somebody you knew from TV as a kid. And your first line's going to be like, "Hey, nice PJs."
Or
I saw you
my
at Domino's,
parents knew them.
Excuse me?
Or my parents knew them because I didn't particularly like Elvis. But let me tell you, I knew a lot about him, or at least I knew the idea of him.
Okay,
And he had fancy pajamas.
He did have some fancy pajamas.
But would you ever tell him, "Hey, nice PJs"? Or you'd be like, "Oh my God, that's Elvis"?
Well, that would have been tough to tell him from the time I was born. And Elvis.
Well, maybe not.
Hypothetical people. Jesus.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't know. Like, because the only thing I would have commented on was probably his cape, but
he didn't have a cape.
Still a cape.
Oh, right.
He had a cape.
I'm thinking of the race car driver, but I see what you're saying.
Right.
It's like, and then, I mean, but like overall, why doesn't the race car driver use the app? He's getting paid tens of millions of dollars driving a FedEx car and wearing FedEx gear, and he doesn't like think to use his phone.
No, that's fair enough. But I think the bigger argument is like, why is someone making tens of millions of dollars ordering Domino's? Like, there is much better pizza, even in like fast food pizza. Like, no offense, Domino's, probably never a sponsor, but
they're not paying us. We don't have to say that they're good. Now,
yeah.
So maybe in the story of the commercial is that he was so hungry, he drove his car off the track, which eliminates my point about these cars are usually left in a garage at the track, and then they, drive their own car home.
Yeah,
and issue with the phone, because probably wouldn't have his phone while racing.
I really want to go to Domino's, but I left my phone at the track with all my other gear.
Right. They really needed to storyboard this commercial much better.
But did he have his wallet?
That's another thing. I mean, like, if he was pulled over, he wouldn't have his license, registration, all that. But I'm pretty sure that vehicle was not street legal because those vehicles don't have headlights, and I don't think they have. And I don't think they have rear view mirrors either. I'm not sure if they do. I know they don't have headlights for sure. That alone makes it not.
I think they have.
They do.
I think they have rear view.
Well, I know, but I know that for a fact that they don't have headlights.
Well, they're 100% not street legal because what's under the hood. So,
well, there you go. And
Damn it, TV lying to us yet again.
I know, dude. No, you could lie to us, but at least make it funny. I don't believe that there's an actual talking gecko in existence. But hey, you put one on TV and you make him seem real. I'm gonna buy it. Which, by the way, I mean, like, we give a lot of crap to these bad commercials, but if I could just throw out here, like, Geico commercials, the Progressive commercials with Baker Mayfield are 100 times better than any of the stupid State Farm commercials, which is so bizarre because the State Farm commercials have triple the amount of football talent than the Progressive commercials do. But I digress. Now, on to our main event discussion about Armed and Dangerous. This film was released in 1986, approximately 88 minutes, starring John Candy, Eugene Levy, and Meg Ryan. Back of the DVD reads, I'm only going to read half of the back of the DVD just because the second half gives away the entire plot of the movie and the ending result as well. John Candy and Eugene Levy charge into the world of private security in the outrageous action comedy Armed and Dangerous. Unfortunately, they're usually charging in the wrong direction. When Candy, a bungling cop, and Levy, an inept lawyer, lose their jobs. They wind up together at the Guard Dog Security Company. After thorough training in the use of firearms, approximately 2 hours, they're raring to go. And that's where I'm going to leave it, because the rest of it just gives away the movie. And I don't want to give away the movie, because I do think this movie should be seen by everybody. I enjoyed this movie more than I remember as a child. Sure, like, there was more adult humor that was present. But what's interesting, before we get into the initial thoughts, is the screenplay was written by two people, Peter Torokvi, but also Harold Ramis.
Yes.
Oh, no
write
kidding.
the screenplay. And Brian Grazer is also attached to this. Brian Grazer, a producer of Arrested Development. So it was cool to see these names in an early project, because you got to see some hints of things. And when I was a kid, I had not really was familiar with the art of improv. And watching this movie now, Eugene Levy and John Candy, I think I would have loved to have been on this set. It must have been like, seeing these scenes over again, I think there's a lot more improvisation than there was in, like, what was in the actual script was probably about half of what made it to the actual movie. Just because both these guys played their roles so well. I'll stop talking for a second. Greg, how about your initial thoughts?
This was a movie I hadn't seen before. So it was fun to go in and see something new. Didn't really hit the spots for me. Had its great moments. Definitely a dated film with the style of comedy. Definitely loved seeing the duo together. They were fantastic. Meg Ryan, great to see her, and actually played a fun part. Wasn't necessarily a fun. It was fun to see her in a non romance film of some sort. But yeah, it was all in all, it was entertaining. But I'll save my score later.
All right, Todd.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Meg Ryan. I mean, like, this is like kind of the inner space time. I know Ozzy, one of his favorites too. I think this was her sweet spot, and then the whole other stuff, like, I lost interest. The one thing I do want to say, yeah, I love this one growing up. I did see it theatrically when I was like 9, 10, I don't know. I didn't know at the time, but like, this is for our other listeners. It's very much from a genre director. I mean, he's done, a lot of stuff that is, Ozzy would have never seen. Truck Stop Women. And
in case anybody's curious, director was Mark L. Lester.
Not to be confused with the other one who did Superman 3. So it's okay, Ozzy.
Gross.
But no, there's like a lot of people that pop up from like genre fare. I mean, you have Brian James, who is one of the union guys. He's been in a ton of stuff. You have Steve Railsback, who pops up at the end as the trucker, who's been in tons of horror stuff. He's most famous for, which we kind of have a connection. He's most famous for playing Charlie Manson and the ABC television miniseries in the 70s. And then it's funny because we have a Charlie Manson type character in this also. And then one of my favorite actors ever, David Hess, pops up for like 3 seconds in the finale, just like standing there, like responding to the radio for no reason. It's just like they just did it because he probably grabbed him and said, "Let's do it." Now, beyond that whole horror nerd part of it, this movie's hysterical. I mean, Tiny Lester is hilarious. He, not a huge part, but John, like, that team, we should have seen more stuff with those two together.
Mm-hmm.
They worked well. I mean, and this is before Eugene Levy blew up as Jim's dad and, really got, I mean, now he's like almost a household name. Well, maybe not by his name, but everyone knows who he is.
Definitely cult fans do.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, here it was just like, because I know they said the part was originally for Tom Hanks, and John Candy's the one who suggested him, a fellow SCTV alum.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how that
interesting.
I want to say it was supposed to be Dan Aykroyd and Belushi before Belushi died, but that's one of those things I don't know if it's a rumor. So
It would have been tough to sell because as entertaining as Belushi was, the character that John Candy plays Dooley is, I think, someone that you like. There's some as a bumbling, as it's described, a bungling cop, but still at the same time, you still can buy that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to police work.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure if I could have bought that from Belushi.
Yeah,
it would have been a tough sell, but it worked out the way it did. I mean, obviously, it's not as popular as a lot of other John Candy movies, or even Eugene Levy. It just kind of just seemed in the middle of the 80s, and it is a very 80s movie. You even get some classic 80s henchmen at the end, which are like picture dictionary definition of 80s henchmen are these individuals, but still fun. Go ahead.
And it's very early LA 80s, so that's another aspect I really like of it too. You get some good Hollywood Boulevard shot, or maybe that was Sunset. I can't 100%, but you get that downtown area.
Yes, absolutely. Now I want to get into the favorite moments. I don't really have a line here, but I have a scene, and that is when they find themselves in a pornographic store and have to dress as other people, and they have to dress in disguise. I laughed more this time around than when I did as a kid. Just I guess like I understood what was happening more along the lines, and like how these two characters behave before this happens and how they're behaving in that particular moment when they're dressed in disguise is so funny. It just seems such like classic comedy, so fun to watch. But I did want to give an honorable mention to the individual that plays Kokolovich. He there's at one point he's standing outside the mansion, and the owner of the security company is saying, "What's going on out there?" "Well, that guy's shooting that guy." "Well, make him stop." And he just yells, "Hey, stop." They're not listening to me. when that clears, they're like, oh, and the guy yells at Kokolovich, "Go find these guys. Go find out what happened." He's literally on the lawn pointing a gun in every direction at every individual who's running by. And I lost it by this one guy, this one like extra character, like very minor role, but still was incredibly effective. And it was moments like that that really made me enjoy is that I never felt that any role was a small role. Anybody who got any bit of screen time did as much as they could with it. At least that's what I felt.
That whole scene, I could see how that's funny, but being a former security guard, like, it's more true to life than it is comedy, unfortunately. Like, I've worked around a lot of security guards that I'm just like, what are you doing? Like, so I think because of my time doing that, it was more like, unfortunately, that's true. But yeah, funniest line. I think there were a few really great scenes, but I think one of my favorite moments was the gun training scene. And they're all shooting, and then Meg Ryan's teaching was like, "All right, just remember, the bullets come out the front very, very fast. Congratulations, you're now armed guards. May God help us all." Like, it was so perfect. It was great because I do feel like that's about as much training as a lot of security guards get. But yeah, that's probably my kicker there.
Before we get to Todd's favorite scene or line, I want you to think of a moment when because you said yourself like, "Oh, that's true." Hold on to that thought of what is true. After Todd's favorite moment, we're going to get back to you. I want to know what's true about security guard business and work. But Todd, favorite line, movie, or favorite line or scene?
Fun fact, I was also a security guard briefly too. So
what?
Yes, I was also class of Tuesday 3:30. So Okay. Well, I have my favorite bit and then favorite line, which you should just call this segment favorite bits, by the way, Ozzy. Take that as a note.
Thank you.
Producing.
Live note.
The line when they show up to the party and they're talking about the suits, and John Candy's like, I got us a deal. And then he's like, what, the Mexican wedding rate? And So yeah, that makes me laugh every time. But bit wise, the union meeting, just like all the dialogue and like and Robert Loggia losing it, like the whole thing.
Just something I remembered back about that union scene is when Norman, Eugene Levy, he stands up and he's asking the questions about where the union fees are going. And they're responding to him, and then he just replies with point of parliamentary procedure, and everybody cheers. And he's just got this, like, it's the first time in his life that he's felt the coolest guy in the room, the smartest guy in the room. This is the first time he's ever felt that way, and you can see it in his face. And I'm tearing up just thinking about it. So I don't know why I didn't write that down, but you mentioning that about the union scenes, very funny. And that like the whole like aura of that scene is actually quite humorous and actually like interesting in terms of because one of the things people have about union concerns today is where do the union dues go. So it was funny to see that scene because it wasn't only like, oh, this is just a throwaway scene in a comedy film, like these union members aren't voting. That's kind of a big deal. So it was a good mixture of like some like kind of a somewhat serious topic, because you also saw the union members, they would do these clips where you would see them looking back at him, and you'd see them looking at the people leading the union, and you saw that like a tennis match. So it was a really fun moment that they captured. But before we get to our reviews, Greg, with your experience as a security guard, what is? Oh, that's true.
So I got two moments that like reflect very well with the movie. One is just about the training. So I've done security twice. Once was working at the Honda Center in Anaheim, so the hockey arena, and then once I was just with Securitas, and I had random different places that I'd work. And the Securitas job was in Stockton, California. Not necessarily the best of places. And I was doing a graveyard shift at a steel mill. And so I was told to walk in, go to this place. I'll meet up with a guy. He'll tell me what I need to know. Cool. Sounds good. I walk in, and like, as I'm driving into the place, I see across the way is like a gun shop. And I was like, cool, gun shop in Stockton, really close to where I'm working. This is going to be delightful. And then I'm driving in, and I see like these little bits of like flame that's on, like some fire going on. And I was like, I don't know what's going on there. And then like there's this giant ditch by the side of the road. I was like, that sounds like I'm going to die there at some point. And so I drive in, and I meet the guy who's supposed to train me, and he was like, all right, so you're just going to hang out here, look out for people, make sure that nobody comes on by. Pretty much it'll be a easy night. I go, okay, well, I saw like this fire that was going on over there. It's like a little flame that seems like it's consistent. I don't know what it's to. And I kind of have this smell of gas in the area. He's like, oh, I don't know, maybe I've just been here so long I don't notice it, but I don't know, should be fine. I was like, all right, that doesn't seem comforting. And I was like, anything else I need to know? He's like, nah, just sign this checklist. So that was basically the training for that security detail, which was fun. And then working Honda Center, there was time a fight broke out. And one of the guys who was actually there close to the fight, he was radioing for people to come by, and like we all ran over. And I was like, hey, what's going on? Because we were all the perimeter of the Honda Center. And the guy had ran out. And we asked, he was asked while we were all there, hey, what's a description of the guys? And he was like, well, there's a tall guy and a short guy. And he goes, okay, any other details? Well, the tall guy, he had a hat. He was pretty tall. And they're like, is that it? That's all you remember? Well, yeah, it's pretty quick. And what about the other guy? Well, he was pretty short. He had long hair. It's like, cool. So that movie was pretty spot on.
Just to dive in here, I'm thinking of the police officer, or where both Norman and Julie, main characters, are in the chief's office, or their boss's office, asking for a description. Well, one was tall, and the other one was, let me guess, short. And then, so like you just completely, it's like you pulled that straight out of the movie. So now, real quick before we get into the reviews, I just want to also mention that not only does this film feature John Candy, Eugene Levy, but also Robert Loggia, which, when you really think about it, is kind of like, remember Robert Loggia from Scarface? You know what I mean? I wouldn't expect to see him in a mid-'80s comedy, but pleasantly surprised to see. Now, and also interesting is they use the famous mansion that's been used in Disorderlies and Dragnet. That one famous mansion. I'm sure, Todd, you probably have more information on that.
Yeah, I know it, but I don't really have, other than the stuff you mentioned. I've seen it in quite a few things.
Okay. All right. Well, there you go. So it's got a very familiar looking mansion. Now, to the review, the movie by itself, like if you were just script by itself, and you had some other people playing it, I'd probably give it a 3. But because of these two individuals and even the Kokolovich, the guy I mentioned, which, by the way, that is Larry Hankin, they all did what they could with the time that they were given. And I really felt that there was a lot of effort put into their roles. For as dumb as a mid-'80s comedy would be, it was still like you felt like they tried. And John Candy just cracks me up in this movie. Of course, as does Eugene Levy. So because of their performances boosted up to a 4 as a comedy for me. But as a movie by itself, without those performances, I'd probably give it a 3. So that's where I'm at.
Fair enough. I have to agree with you with if it weren't for the performance, it would be lower than what I scored it. But for me, the movie as a whole, it was fun. As a comedy, it had moments, but I never had like a laugh out loud moment. And there was a moment that kind of granted, knowing who the villains are in this film at the end, you kind of get it. But I'm sorry, when people are going to rob a warehouse and then you see them wearing like a button-up shirt and tie and nice pants and a belt, you're like, this is weird and wrong, and I don't agree with it. It just is. I feel like that shouldn't be that way. But through and through, I unfortunately have to give this movie 2.5. Yeah, I know. Sorry.
No, it's you don't need to apologize for your weirdness. Todd.
All right. Well, since we didn't mention him earlier and I've rattled off a bunch of names in this, I'm surprised Ozzy didn't drop this one. And that's James Tolkien, aka Strickland from the Back to the Future films.
Oh, slacker.
Yeah, there. So
right, yes.
And that
chocolate covered pretzel.
No, it's a different guy.
Oh, different guy? My
bad. Not another great, not Michael Rooker. I'm a 4 also. Yeah, I really love this. I don't know, maybe it's all the genre people that pop up that really help my enjoyment, but I've always liked this one since I first saw it as a kid. So
and Todd, I think you and me personally have a soft spot for really 80s things. I think more so than Greg. I
think mine's more slapstick when it gets to the 80s.
Yes, but like this was really this was an 80s movie through and through. Where compared to like last week when we saw Blazing Saddles, that's timeless. Like you could see that at any time period, it fits. But this is like, if you're showing this movie or if you're watching this movie for the first time, you gotta prepare yourself by knowing this is an 80s movie.
I saw B. Dalton in the background. I was like, oh shit, I remember B. Dalton. For those who don't know, B. Dalton was a bookstore. So books were used to be paper things you read. They all went on tablets.
Right.
Not an ebook.
Well, regardless, I mean, Greg, let me ask you this. I mean, because you did rank it the lowest out of all of us. If somebody asked you, should I watch this movie? What would you say?
Check it out for sure. Like if we're talking about like as some when you put them next to the comedy movies we've seen so far, I think that's part of my ranking is that it doesn't come to the level of the ones that we've already rated. But it is a fun adventure. Like it really is. It brings back a lot of nostalgia of the time. There's some great jokes in it. Again, to me, it wasn't like laugh out loud funny, but it was like, that's fun. So,
Well, just
but it was a lot of
speak on
fun.
that.
I'd still
Just
check
to-
it out.
Speak on that real quick. I mean, we just did Blazing Saddles last week, which arguably is the greatest comedy of all time for a lot of people. So
Right.
it's really hard to follow up. And we don't want to just be a show where we're just doing movies everybody's seen. You know, we want to kind of expand it, do some obscure movies out there. And next week, good segue opportunity to say that next week we're going to be watching and reviewing See No Evil, Hear No Evil. Now, this movie stars Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. Very excited to revisit it. I watched this movie a ton of times as a kid. First time was renting it from a Chilean video store when I spent my winter vacation there or summer vacation there. So I'm looking forward to revisiting it. But based on what I've heard in discussions since that time, I don't think it's one that a lot of people have seen. So I'm looking forward to reviewing and discussing that. And anything else you guys would like to say before we head out?
No.
No, I think it was a fun week. Thanks for the commercial. It was fun to have a good chat about that. But I'm looking forward to this coming up movie. It's been a long time.
Yes, absolutely.
You already put over the Patreon. So also we got our Final Destination show this week on the whole franchise.
Oh, on the Flesh Wound Horror.
Yes, on the Flesh Wound Horror. And then we're also going to have something that I think is really good, a documentary about the last blockbuster. And we're also going to be sharing our video store memories on a Patreon exclusive.
Wow.
And both me and Pugs did work at a video store. He
I
worked
am
in big
not-
time video, and I worked at the shitty video store. If we're going to use the Clerks analogy,
I really am looking forward to that episode, and we'll probably check that out.
All right, well,
Oh,
that's all I got
now-
to plug.
You did mention the Patreon. I mentioned that earlier. In case you forgot, that was patreon.com/fleshwoundfeatures. Once again, he is Greg Larson. That is Flesh Wound producer Todd. And I'm Ozzy V, and we'll see you next week right here on Flesh Wound Farce.